We've been trying to make a case that diversity is essential to design excellence in the 21st century, that it's not just about bringing more people to the table, it's also about changing the outcomes of design to be more relevant to communities. And so we talked about Xenia S. Miller as really our champion for the project, being inspired by the fact that this prize is about this partnership between a great man and a great woman.
And we talk so much about finding your voice, but we know that the community has a voice. I think it's more about removing the barriers. And so we wanted to pose this question that was more specific than the open-ended questions we often ask as designers. And so we kicked off the engagement by asking the community this one question: tell us about a woman who changed the world.
We took a very famous magazine cover of J. Irwin Miller on the cover of Esquire magazine, and we put Xenia on the cover of Esquire, and we said, this woman changed the world. It was really interesting because here's a community that they all know that magazine cover. That's part of the lore of the Miller family, right? And so it was this moment that could have been perceived in a negative way, but it was so positive. You could feel the tension in the room. It sort of like broke something open, and people were hooting and laughing and cheering.
It was interesting because the men came up to us and wanted to talk about their wife or their daughter, and then the women came up to us and said, I want to volunteer. So we've set up these conversation boxes that have cards next to them, and we're collecting stories of the community as demonstration that their voices were needed.
We really take a lot of inspiration from the kinds of stories they tell us and try to find a way to honor that in the work. It's very much our philosophy to sort of think boundlessly about sites and where they fit in the bigger picture of culture and place.
If you look back through the history of architecture in particular, but other things as well, there's been this erasure of women's stories. And the site also has this really interesting history of erasure and pieces that have been removed over time that were really critical parts of the identity of the architecture and the experience. There were these trellises outside that had wisteria and different plantings, and that's one of the pieces we want to return.
Our whole strategy is about physical planters that will have purple flowers, and these truss members that are modules of a system that can be put together to make different configurations of space, that can be paired together and stacked as sort of bleachers or sort of laid out flat as a big stage, sometimes just used as benches. So it's kind of a module to really let the community change with our programming ideas. So literally, physically, they can move these elements and customize space on the site. And I think that's also a really important thing for us. Great design is about how well it makes someone feel welcome and how much they can participate in it and linger in it. And so it's much less about our stamp on the site and more about giving them the tools to express themselves.
So as we bring back this garden experience, we want to develop plant ID tags as a place where a really beautiful piece of signage that recounts the stories that we learned at the beginning so that those don't disappear by the end.
And so we think about the relationship of people to place, the stories that we tell, the ways we make connections between things. It was such a new idea to think about sort of excavating and celebrating the women's stories in the community as part of a design exhibition.